Under a bruised dawn sky, Captain Elias Varenne trudged through the brittle fields that once shimmered with life. The wind carried ash now, fine, grey snow that drifted down like a parody of winter. He moved carefully, boots crunching over glass and bone, his rifle slung low, its barrel caked in soot. The smell of burned wheat mixed with something far worse, something he refused to name. He had left his post 2 hours too late. The alien bombardment came fast, precise, and merciless. By the time he broke through the orbital interference, the village was gone. It was supposed to be just another target, one of many scattered in the Zirath Dominion's pacification grid. They called it a surgical strike. He called it slaughter. Elias stepped over a half-buried sign that once read Hollow Creek. The letters were melted, warped into meaningless curves. His HUD flickered weakly, the EMP waves still scrambled all nearby tech. Static hissed through his helmet speakers like ghosts whispering from a dead world. He reached what was left of the community well. Around it lay the outlines of people who'd never made it to the shelters. Shadows of lives burned into stone. His pulse thudded hard against the armor plates over his chest. He crouched beside one small shape, fingers trembling despite the heat. A locket glinted faintly from the rubble. His sister's. The one she never took off. The restraint in his voice cracked as he whispered her name. There was no answer, of course, only the wind moaning through hollow door frames. He closed his hand around the locket, crushing the metal against his palm until his glove tore. Warm blood slicked his fingers, mixing with dust and ash. A chime pulsed in his ear, a signal, faint but human. Colonel Richter's voice emerged, distorted but commanding. Varenne. Report. We lost comms with your squad. Dead, Elias rasped. All of them. The village too. A pause, heavy as stone. We couldn't intercept their strike order. I'm sorry, son. The word sorry was meaningless. The Zirath didn't bomb random settlements for strategy, they did it to remind humanity what powerlessness felt like. This was their message, submission or extinction. Elias looked up at the sky, streaked with crimson clouds where the upper atmosphere still burned. Above that red haze, invisible ships hung like executioners, vast, elegant, silent. His jaw tightened. How many other sites hit? Too many, Richter said. Command is pulling back to orbital base Vega. We can't defend scattered ground assets anymore. So we retreat again. The bitterness in his tone cut through static. Let them erase us piece by piece. That's an order, Captain. You can't fight gods. Elias ended the transmission. Orders didn't matter now. Not when the gods had already descended and murdered everything he cared for. He walked to what used to be his home, a single-level farmhouse at the edge of the settlement. The roof was gone, replaced by open sky. His mother's garden lay buried under debris. He remembered her laughing as she scolded him for tracking mud through the kitchen, his sister stealing bread from the oven when she thought no one saw. All of it gone in a single orbital flash. A flicker of motion caught his eye, a faint light from beneath the wreckage. He pushed debris aside, revealing a small comm beacon. The display blinked weakly, emergency record log 1. He pressed play. His sister's voice filled the air, soft and terrified. Eli, the sky's on fire. Mom says we should go to the cellar but there's ships. They're shining. Eli, please come back soon. I'm scared. Static consumed the rest. He sank to his knees, the sound punching through him harder than any blast. Grief twisted into something cold and merciless. The Zirath called this justice for humanity's aggression. They had decided one species didn't deserve the stars. He decided they didn't deserve them either. Footsteps crunched behind him. A survivor? No, just one of his men, Sergeant Hale, armor scorched and visor cracked. His voice was hoarse. Captain! We pulled 2 escape pods from the western ridge. No civilians. Just fragments. Elias stood slowly, slipping the locket into his uniform. Gather the remains, he said flatly. For burial, sir. No, Elias replied, eyes fixed on the sky. For evidence. Hale hesitated, unsettled by the tone. Evidence of what? That we're still human enough to remember what they did. They worked in silence until the sun sank, staining the horizon blood red. Drones circled above, distant shadows of their enemies' surveillance. Elias ignored them. Let them watch. Let them see what they had created. As night fell, he climbed a rise overlooking the ruins. The landscape shimmered faintly with radioactive dust. He opened his field transmitter, rerouting its frequency to all remaining human channels. Static bled through for several seconds before the system stabilized. "This is Captain Elias Varenne of the Earth Defense Force," he began, voice steady despite the exhaustion hollowing him out. "I'm broadcasting from Hollow Creek, Sector Delta 12. It no longer exists." He paused, glancing at the scorched valley below. "The Zirath call this peace enforcement. They call us savages. But I've seen their peace, and I've seen our dead. They want us broken, terrified, compliant." His tone hardened. "They've mistaken silence for surrender." He could almost feel Richter's reprimand echoing from light years away. It didn't matter. The truth burned too brightly to contain. "They bombed our homes, our families, our soil," he continued. "From this day forward, humanity answers in kind. No more running. No more hiding behind debris and excuses. We take the fight to their skies, their cities, their world." He stopped there, letting the word settle. The transmission tower crackled with interference, but his voice carried through the chaos. "We are not the children of ashes. We are the fire that follows." Somewhere across the planetary network, survivors would hear him. Soldiers on fractured fronts, miners in collapsed domes, pilots drifting in ruined orbit, all of them waiting for something to believe in. He lowered the transmitter, watching the wind scatter ashes across his boots. The village was gone, but something else had risen in its place, something sharper than grief, more enduring than rage. Hale spoke quietly beside him. "Sir, what now?" Elias looked up at the distant stars, cold, brilliant, and unreachable. "Now," he said, "we make them bleed." A rumble echoed across the plains, one of the enemy's ships lifting off, its engines roaring like judgment. Elias didn't flinch. His reflection glinted in his visor, eyes burning like twin embers in the dark. For the first time since the bombardment began, he smiled. It wasn't the smile of a man who'd won anything. It was the grim curve of someone who'd already decided how far he was willing to go. In the distance, the stars pulsed faintly, unaware that humanity had just crossed a threshold it could never return from. The village of Hollow Creek lay silent behind him, a grave and a promise. Elias turned away from it, walking into the smoke, carrying the fire forward. Metal groaned beneath Elias Varen's boots as he stepped into the command deck of the HMS Vengeance. The ship was a monument to desperation, human engineering grafted over captured alien tech, stitched together by hands that had forgotten rest. Around him, crews moved like phantoms through the dim light, faces gaunt but eyes alive. They all knew what this ship meant. It wasn't just steel and circuitry, it was revenge given form. The Martian shipyard they'd built it in still hung below, half frozen under red storms. Humanity's last stronghold had become a graveyard of ambition and a cradle of fury. Elias stood before the main viewport, the black of space yawning endlessly ahead. Somewhere out there, the Zirath watched, believing the species they'd crushed could never rise again. Power grid holding steady, Lieutenant Carlo Day reported, fingers dancing across the control console. He was young, too young, perhaps, but his brilliance had saved the project a dozen times. Fusion relays stable, reactor efficiency up 12% since last calibration. Elias gave a small nod. "And the weapon core?" "Unstable," Carlo admitted, rubbing grease from his palms. "Like everything we build these days. But it'll work. Once." A flicker of dry humor crossed Elias's face. "Once is all we need." The deck doors slid open with a hiss. Major Holt entered, armor gleaming with new plating, the crimson insignia of the Terran Reclamation Fleet emblazoned across his chest. He had the kind of face that belonged in old war memorials, square, uncompromising. "Fleet readiness at 70%, Holt said. "Vessel's endurance and St. George are prepped for departure. The Vengeance leads the spearhead." Elias turned from the viewport. "And morale?" Holt smirked faintly. They've seen what happened to Earth, Captain. No one's asking why we're going. The words hung heavy in the recycled air. Humanity had been fractured, governments dissolved, communication broken. But Elias's broadcast had spread through the ruins like wildfire. Men who had lost everything needed purpose, and vengeance had become their gospel. The Terran reclamation fleet was that faith made flesh. Colonel Richter's voice came through the comms, clear and cold. Elias, this is command. I'm reviewing your final launch manifest. You've turned half our fleet into a suicide armada. Elias keyed the channel open. We're out of time, Colonel. Every day we wait, another colony falls. I won't die on my knees waiting for permission. Richter sighed, the sound brittle. This isn't what we trained for. You're leading men into a slaughter. Then I'll make sure it's their slaughter, Elias said, ending the call. He didn't need Richter's blessing. He needed results. Carlo approached, lowering his voice. Sir, if we use the Zirath reactor design the wrong way, it could destabilize. We're harnessing technology we barely understand. Elias glanced at him. That's what they said about fire. Carlo hesitated, then nodded. Then let's burn brighter than they ever thought we could. Hours later, the fleet launched. Engines ignited across the void, streaking red and white through the dark. The Vengeance took point, leading 42 ships into the unknown. Elias stood silent as the stars wheeled around them, the hum of the reactor thrumming like a heartbeat underfoot. He could almost hear his sister's voice again, that final frightened recording. It guided him now, not as memory, but as command. Their first mission came sooner than expected. A Zirath convoy moved through the outer asteroid belt, ferrying plasma cores and weaponized drones. The fleet scanners painted it across their displays like a wound in the black. Holt stood beside Elias, gaze sharp. We can intercept in 20 minutes if we cut across the debris field. Do it, Elias said. Keep emissions dark until we're close enough to strike. The maneuver was suicide. Zirath patrols detected anything that moved wrong within light minutes. But humanity had learned to be invisible, to move between silence and shadow. The ships wove through asteroid fragments, scraping by meters from collision, until the convoy loomed ahead, massive silver vessels surrounded by escort drones. Targets acquired, Holt said. Helm, Elias ordered, all ships, lock onto their lead transport. Fire on my mark. Carlo's voice broke in, urgent. Captain, if we hit the escort first, we can cripple their sensors. Negative, Elias snapped. We hit the heart. Always the heart. He raised his hand, and space erupted. Human torpedoes streaked forward, tearing through the convoy center. The lead Zirath ship bloomed with fire, fragments spiraling like shattered stars. Their drones swarmed in response, energy bolts lancing through the dark. One of the Terran frigates went silent in seconds, its hull flaring into molten wreckage. Elias barked orders faster than thought, his voice cutting through chaos. Redirect batteries. Shield formation Delta. Keep the formation tight. The fleet moved as one, battered but relentless. Carlo's system screamed warnings, but he held position, rerouting power from life support to the guns. Holt manned a turret himself, snarling curses through the comm as he cut through alien fighters. Within minutes, the battle was over. Half the convoy destroyed, the rest fleeing into hyperspace. Silence fell again, broken only by the hum of engines and the faint crackle of damaged comms. Holt exhaled hard. First victory for the reclamation fleet. Carlo leaned against his console, sweat streaking down his temples. We lost 80 men. Elias stared at the drifting wreckage. They died proving we can still fight. That's worth more than survival. He ordered the fleet to recover debris. Zirath tech could be scavenged, reworked. Every fragment of alien metal was a step toward equality. As drones pulled twisted wrecks into the cargo bays, Elias turned his gaze once more to the stars. Somewhere beyond them lay the Zirath Homeworld, the heart of everything he meant to end. Later, alone in his quarters, he reviewed the footage of the battle. The explosions reflected in his eyes like small suns. His hands trembled once, then steadied. The part of him that once doubted was gone now, burned away with the last trace of Hollow Creek. A soft chime broke the silence. Private message from Colonel Richter. Elias considered deleting it, then opened it. Elias, Richter's voice said, weary but sincere, I know what you think you're doing. But revenge doesn't rebuild worlds. It just makes more graves. You can still turn back before you become the thing you hate. Elias stared at the message, then shut it off. He looked to the viewport, where Mars's red glow was fading behind them. I already became it, he whispered. The intercom chimed again, Carlo's voice, uncertain. Captain, incoming transmission. It's encrypted Zirath data, pulled from the convoy wreckage. Looks like coordinates. Elias straightened, every muscle coiled tight. To where? Carlo hesitated. A planetary cluster. Central Command, maybe. Could be their capital. The silence that followed was long, suffocating. Elias could feel the crew waiting, could sense the breathless hunger beneath their exhaustion. He smiled faintly, a grim spark flickering to life. Plot a course, he said. We're going hunting. Carlo met his gaze, worry flashing in his eyes. Sir, that's deep into their territory. We won't have backup. Not even a fallback corridor. Then there's no retreat, Elias replied. This is the line we draw in the stars. The engines rumbled, the ship trembling as the coordinates locked in. Around them, the fleet shifted formation, lights flickering like candles in a storm. Every man aboard knew what the order meant. There would be no peace, no pause, no return. Only vengeance, absolute and final. Elias turned back to the viewport one last time. The stars stretched thin as hyperspace opened before them, a wound in the universe itself. He spoke softly, almost to himself. They thought we'd vanish quietly. Let's teach them how loud the dead can scream. And as the vengeance leapt into the dark, humanity followed. The stars ahead stretched like molten glass, bending and blurring as the HMS Vengeance tore through hyperspace. For 3 months, Elias Varen's fleet had drifted through the cold between galaxies, chasing a trail of alien signals toward a system no human had ever seen. Each day bled into the next, silence, repairs, drills, and the hum of engines that never truly slept. Humanity's last crusade moved through the void like a phantom, unseen, unstoppable, uncertain if it still deserved to exist. Elias stood in the observation chamber, eyes fixed on the streaking light beyond the glass. His reflection stared back, a gaunt face framed by silver stubble, eyes the color of iron and exhaustion. Once, those eyes had seen oceans, sunlight, laughter. Now they saw only targets. Carlo Day entered quietly, carrying a tablet clutched to his chest. The young engineer had changed too, his nervous energy replaced by a kind of grim resolve. Alio's core's fully charged, he said. We've stabilized the matrix with the new phase regulator, but it's still a weapon built to end worlds, Elias finished for him. Carlo nodded. Sir, I built it because you asked me to. But every time it pulses, it feels like it's alive. Like it knows what it's meant to do. Elias didn't answer. The Alio's core was humanity's ultimate vengeance, a stolen Zirath energy lattice re-engineered into a doomsday engine. It could burn an atmosphere in minutes. To some, it was salvation. To others, sacrilege. To Elias, it was balance. Sir, Carlo said softly, this isn't strategy anymore. This is extinction. Elias turned his gaze on him, calm but unreadable. You've seen what they did to Earth. To the colonies. There's no peace left to build on. Only ashes. The Zirath must learn fear the way we did. Carlo lowered his eyes. Fear doesn't end wars, Captain. It just changes who carries the guilt. Before Elias could answer, the deck shuddered. Klaxons wailed through the corridor. Holt's voice cut through the noise over comms. Contact. Multiple ships on intercept vector, Zirath signatures. Elias was already moving. Battle stations. He stormed into the command deck as red light flooded the room. Beyond the viewport, the stars warped as they dropped from hyperspace into a debris field lit by a dying sun. The Zirath fleet emerged from the dark, sleek silver vessels moving with insect precision, their formation flawless. How the hell did they find us? Holt growled, strapping into his station. Doesn't matter, Elias said. We end them before they report back. The Vengeance shook violently as plasma lances streaked past, close enough to blister the outer hull. Alarms screamed. The crew scrambled through damage protocols with grim efficiency. Shields at 40%, Carlo reported. Reactor output dropping. If we don't reroute, we lose propulsion. Divert from life support, Elias ordered. Carlo's head snapped up. Sir. Do it. The order sliced through argument. Air thinned as systems recalibrated, frost blooming across bulkheads. Men gasped but continued their duties. Elias's voice rose above the chaos. Target their command ship. Fire the forward rail batteries. The Vengeance roared, launching a storm of tungsten slugs that tore through one of the alien vessels. Fragments blossomed in silence. Holt whooped, firing secondary cannons into the swarm. But for every ship they destroyed, 2 more filled the void. A Zeraf boarding pod slammed into the port side. Metal screamed as claws dug through the hull. The lights flickered, and suddenly the fight wasn't distant anymore, it was inside. Elias unholstered his sidearm and sprinted toward the breach with Holt and a handful of Marines. The corridor filled with the hiss of atmosphere venting to space. Then came the invaders, tall, angular shapes with glimmering carapaces, their weapons humming with energy. The first alien fell to Holt's rifle. The second nearly took Elias's head before he jammed his blade under its chin, wrenching until the creature collapsed. The fight was brutal, desperate, personal. Sparks illuminated blood and smoke as men shouted through static. When it was over, Elias stood amid the corpses, both human and alien. He wiped his blade clean, his breath fogging in the frigid air. Captain, Carlo's voice gasped through the comm, we've got reactor instability. The Alio's core's containment is fluctuating. It's reacting to the Zeraf energy signatures, like it's feeding on them. Can you shut it down? Maybe. But if it destabilizes, it'll detonate. Half the fleet goes with it. Elias was silent for a long moment. Then stabilize it manually. Carlo's voice wavered. Sir, that could kill me. Then die well, Elias said, and cut the channel. Holt stared at him. You'd sacrifice the boy? He's the only one keeping this ship from splitting apart. Elias holstered his pistol. He built the fire. He knows how to contain it. You're losing it, Captain, Holt said quietly. This isn't vengeance anymore. It's suicide. Elias turned on him. You think I don't know that? You think I wanted this war? They made us monsters when they decided we weren't worth mercy. I'm just showing them what that decision costs. Before Holt could respond, a brilliant flare lit the viewport. The Zeraf flagship was charging a planetary beam, an energy column bright enough to blind sensors. They're aiming for the core, Carlo shouted over comms. If they hit it, everything within 1,000 kilometers vaporizes. Elias's decision came instantly. Bring us nose to nose with that flagship. Are you insane? Holt barked. Completely, Elias said. Do it. The Vengeance surged forward, engines howling. Alien fire scythed across its hull, tearing armor away like paper. Inside the reactor chamber, Carlo fought the flickering containment field, hands shaking over the controls. The core pulsed brighter with every impact, golden arcs crawling across its surface like veins of lightning. Almost there, he whispered to himself. Just a little longer. Elias's voice thundered through the intercom. Carlo, when I give the signal, channel full power through the core. Turn their own weapon back on them. Captain, that could ignite the reactor. That's the point. The Zeraf beam struck, pure white fire cascading through the void. But before it reached the Vengeance, the Alio's core ignited. The explosion swallowed both lights, folding the enemy's energy back upon itself. The Zeraf flagship split apart, torn into molten ribbons. Silence followed, stunning, unnatural. Then, the fleet's comms erupted in cheers. They'd survived. Barely. Elias exhaled, gripping the railing as the deck stabilized. Status? Carlo's voice came faintly, exhausted but alive. Reactor holding. Core drained, but intact. Holt laughed, relief breaking through his grim mask. "You mad bastard. You actually did it." But Elias didn't smile. He looked at the burning wreckage drifting outside, and for the first time in months, doubt flickered across his face. They'd won, but the victory tasted hollow. Later, in the dark quiet of his quarters, he replayed the battle footage. Every alien ship that died, every human scream that cut through static, it all blurred together. His reflection stared back at him from the dark glass, unrecognizable. Carlo entered without knocking. He looked pale, shaken. "Sir, I decoded the Zirath database we pulled from the last wreck. You need to see this." He handed Elias the tablet. Streams of alien text flickered, translated into human script. There were no attack orders, no military directives. Just a signal log. The first human probe ever sent beyond the solar system, transmitting ancient footage of war, fire, and triumph, interpreted by the Zirath as a declaration of conquest. Elias's hands tightened around the device. "They thought we were coming for them." Carlo nodded slowly. "They were defending themselves." The words landed like a blade between his ribs. Everything, the burning villages, the fleet, the core, born of a misunderstanding. He felt the weight of it press into him like gravity itself. Holt's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we're approaching the Zirath system. Final coordinates confirmed." "Orders." Elias looked out at the stars, their cold light glinting off his face. His voice, when it came, was low and steady. "Prepare the Helios core. We finish this." Carlo took a step forward. "Sir, if you do this, there's no coming back." Elias didn't look away from the viewport. "There's nothing left to come back to." The intercom clicked off. Engines rumbled to life. The Vengeance turned toward the distant blue shimmer of the Zirath homeworld, its reflection glimmering in Elias's eyes like a promise and a curse. The Zirath homeworld filled the viewport like a blue sun, vast, oceanic, luminous with life. Its atmosphere shimmered with the glow of cytolites woven into coral continents and crystalline towers that reached into the clouds. For a long moment, no one on the Vengeance spoke. Even the hum of the reactor seemed to quiet, as if the ship itself understood the enormity of what came next. Humanity's vengeance stood poised over a world that had never seen mercy, and Elias Varen was the hand holding the trigger. "Fleet in position," Holt said, his voice low. "Orbital perimeter established. We've got clear firing lines." Carlo's reflection flickered on the glass beside Elias, his expression pale. "The core is fully charged, Captain. One activation and the planet's atmosphere will ignite. Every living thing down there, gone." Elias's eyes didn't leave the world below. "Then it ends quickly." Carlo took a step closer. "This isn't justice. It's annihilation." "They taught us annihilation," Elias replied, his tone flat, unwavering. "They bombed our soil, slaughtered our families, and called it necessary. I call this balance." Holt looked between them, tension thick in the air. "Orders, sir." "Deploy ground batteries. Prepare to fire on my mark." The command moved through the fleet like a heartbeat. Silos opened. Warheads glowed red in the cold void. On the Zirath world, alarms began to pulse in slow, terrified rhythm. Their defense grids shimmered to life, an aurora of desperate light stretching across the horizon. Carlo lingered at the control terminal, hands trembling. "Sir, I can't. If I engage the Helios core, there's no containment. It'll collapse into itself." Elias finally turned to him. "Then we die with them." The young engineer stared at him, eyes wide. "You're asking for extinction." "I'm asking for peace," Elias said. "The kind that no one dares break again." Before Carlo could answer, a burst of static broke through the comms. Colonel Richter's voice crackled across the bridge, strained but unmistakable. "Elias! Stand down. I'm ordering you to cease fire." Elias stiffened. "How the hell did you get this channel?" "We've been tracking you since Mars." "We know what you're about to do," Richter said. "Elias, you've gone far enough. The Zirath are transmitting surrender protocols. You've already won." Elias's jaw tightened. "They didn't surrender when it was our cities burning. Why should I care now?" Because you're human, Richter said. And if you do this, there won't be any humanity left to save. For a heartbeat, the bridge was silent. Even Holt hesitated, uncertainty flickering in his hardened gaze. Carlo's voice broke the stillness. Sir, please. Don't make this the story they tell about us. Elias turned toward the viewport again. The planet gleamed below, so beautiful it was almost cruel. He could see the faint arcs of Zirath ships rising through the atmosphere, their movements chaotic, uncoordinated. Not soldiers, refugees. He wanted to feel doubt. He wanted to hear his sister's voice, to remember something other than ash and fire. But all that lived in him now was the vow he'd made among the ruins of Hollow Creek. They will remember us. Aelio's core to full power, he ordered quietly. Carlo's face hardened with despair. Aye, sir. The lights dimmed. The ship vibrated as the reactor's hum rose into a deep, throbbing growl. The viewport filled with the growing pulse of golden light, the Aelio's core awakening like a captive star. Static rippled through the fleet. Even the enemy fell silent, their signals faltering under the magnitude of what was coming. Final alignment complete, Holt reported, voice shaking despite himself. Target locked. Elias placed his hand on the console, feeling the vibration run through his bones. Fire. Carlo hesitated. Captain. Do it. The command echoed like thunder. The Aelio's core unleashed a beam of pure energy that lanced through the void and pierced the planet's upper atmosphere. The oceans boiled where it struck. The horizon split apart in molten lines that raced across continents. A chain reaction ignited in the air itself, turning blue skies to blazing white. The Zirath Homeworld screamed, a silent explosion visible from orbit, a flower of fire unfolding across its surface. The fleet's sensors overloaded. Every screen went white. The planet's oceans rose in a single, blinding wave before collapsing inward. Holt shielded his eyes. My God! Elias watched it all, unmoving. The fire below reflected in his pupils, twin infernos burning in the shadow of his face. Not your God, he murmured. Ours. Then the deck shuddered violently. Carlo's voice broke into panic. Containment breach. The core's destabilizing, it's drawing power from the planet's collapse. We're caught in the feedback. Shut it down. Holt shouted. I can't. Carlo slammed his hands over the controls, sparks bursting around him. It's self-feeding, the explosions amplifying. Elias gripped the railing, staring into the maelstrom below. Evacuate the fleet. Get as many out as you can. What about you? Holt demanded. Elias looked at him and smiled, a quiet, weary curve of the mouth. I started this. I'll end it. Holt's voice cracked with anger. Damn you, Elias, we followed you. Don't you dare make this a martyr's grave. Elias clasped his shoulder once, firm. You followed humanity, Holt. Keep it alive. Holt stared at him, then turned and barked evacuation orders. The fleet began to scatter, ships diving into hyperspace corridors as debris rained around them. Carlo stayed at his post, refusing to leave. Go, Elias said. Not without you, Carlo replied. I built this monster. I'll see it through. The core flared again, its light blinding, pure. Elias took the transmitter from his belt and opened a final wideband channel. Static hissed, then silence. This is Captain Elias Varen of the HMS Vengeance, he said, his voice steady over the dying roar of the ship. 3 years ago, they bombed our home. Today, we return the favor. Humanity does not beg. We do not bow. We remember. And now, so will they. The Aelio's core's glow consumed the bridge. Carlo's console exploded in a flash of white, hurling him backward. Elias stood alone as the walls melted away into light. The last thing he saw was the Zirath planet breaking apart, its oceans turned to fire, its cities collapsing into the molten crust. Then everything vanished. From far across the galaxy, those who survived saw it, a new star burning where the Zirath homeworld had been. Some thought it a supernova. Others knew better. They called it Varen's Light. Weeks later, aboard a damaged carrier limping through deep space, Holt recorded the final entry for what remained of the Terran reclamation fleet. His voice was low, hollow. Captain Elias Varen is presumed lost with the Vengeance. The Zirath homeworld is gone. No further hostile contact detected. What remains of humanity is regrouping. We have peace, for now. He paused, staring at the flickering image of the new star. He gave us victory, he said softly, but not redemption. He shut off the recorder and sat in silence, the ship's hum the only sound. Around him, the crew whispered about the man who burned a world to avenge his own. To some, Elias was a monster. To others, a savior. To all, a warning. Far beyond, in the emptiness between stars, a faint signal drifted through static, Elias's voice, barely more than a whisper. We are the fire that follows. Then the signal died, swallowed by the void, leaving only silence and a single burning star to remember humanity's vengeance.